The 9th Regiment of Foot was an infantry line regiment of the British Army from 1751 to 1881. It became the Norfolk Regiment following the Army reforms of 1881. Early history. The title of 9th Regiment of Foot was awarded in 1751, but the origins of the regiment are with Henry Cornwall's Regiment of Foot raised by James II in 1685 in response to the Monmouth Rebellion. Cornwall resigned his post following the Glorious Revolution due to his personal Jacobite sympathies, and command went to John Cunningham, who led a failed attempt to relieve the besieged city of Derry in 1689. Cunningham was in turn replaced by William Stewart, under whom the regiment took part in a more successful relief of Derry under General Percy Kirk. The regiment fought in the Williamite War in Ireland, seeing action at the Battle of the Boyne and Battle of Aughrim, as well as the Siege of Limerick and Siege of Limerick and Siege of Athlone. In the War of the Spanish Succession, the regiment fought in several engagements, including the Battle of Almanza. Early campaigns. During the 7 Years' War, the regiment won its first formal battle honour as part of the expedition that captured Belle Isle from the French in 1761. In 1762 they sailed with George Keppel, 3rd Earl of Albemarle, in the British expedition against Cuba and took part in the siege and subsequent capture of Havana. Following the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1763 and the end of the war, they moved to a posting at St. Augustine, Florida, where John Hedges and Francis Ogilvie were his first British governors of acting way. At this stage the strength was reported as less than 300 out of the approximately 1,000 that had left Great Britain. Out of these, only 20 had been killed in action, the remainder of casualties being caused by malaria and yellow fever, which were so common in the West Indies at the time. The regiment remained at St. Augustine for the next 6 years, and were described by a reviewing officer as being in a very poor condition. Following a brief spell in Ireland and the outbreak of war in the American colonies, the regiment was sent to Canada to become a part of an expedition under Major General John Burgoyne designed to divide the New England colonies from the neighbors to the south. The Saratoga campaign that followed ended with the surrender of the entire army, and the regiment then spent 3 years as prisoners of war as part of the Convention Army. On its return from America, the regiment was posted to Norwich in order to recover and recruit up to strength. They spent the next 7 years based in the city, and on the 31st of August 1782 the regiment became the 9th Regiment of Foot. In 1799 the King approved the regiment's use of Britannia as its symbol, and the regiment was expanded to 3 battalions. The next period of active service was the Unsuccessful campaign in Flanders under the Duke of York. After the Peace of Amiens in 1802, the regiment was reduced to a single battalion. Soon after, the 1st Battalion were sent to Ireland for 3 years of garrison duty, with the 2nd Battalion being raised in 1804 in Dorset. In November 1805, shortly after the Great Battle of Trafalgar, the regiment suffered a significant tragedy. As the 1st Battalion returned from Ireland, a storm wrecked the troop transport Ariadne on the northern French coast, and almost 300 men were taken prisoner. The 1st Battalion then took part in an expedition to free Hanover from the French. The country had been recently stripped of its forces to take part in the campaign that would climax in the Battle of Austerlitz. In the peace settlement that followed, Hanover was ceded to Prussia and the British troops were ordered to return home. Napoleonic Wars. The 9th arrived in the Spanish Peninsula in 1808 and fought at Rolica and Vimiero. Following the retreat from Corunna, the 9th buried Sir John Moore and were the last British regiment to leave Spanish soil. Following the disastrous Walcheren expedition to the Low Countries, the regiment returned to the peninsula and fought at Basico, Salamanca, Vitoria, at the Siege of San Sebastian, and the Battle of of the knife. The regiment fought alongside Portuguese troops as part of Sir Manly Power's brigade, which was in Picton's fighting third at the Battle of Vittoria, where the 3rd Battalion took a key bridge under heavy fire. The regiment was sent to Canada with most of Wellington's veteran units to prevent the threatened invasion by the United States, and so arrived in Europe too late for Waterloo. The 1st Battalion participated in the Army of Occupation in France, whilst the 2nd Battalion was disbanded at the end of 1815. 19th century. The regiment saw action at Kabul in the First Anglo-Afghan War, and in the First Anglo-Sikh War they fought with exceptional valor at the Battle of Mudki, Battle of Ferozshah and the Battle of Sabran. The Norfolk Artillery Militia was formed in 1853. In the Crimean War, the regiment fought at the Siege of Sevastopol. The 2nd Battalion was raised once more in 1857, and in the 1860s was landed at Yokohama as part of the British garrison stationed in protection of British commercial and diplomatic interests in the recently opened treaty port. The battalion saw action on the northwest frontier in 1877, and then in the Second Anglo-Afghan War fought at Kabul in 1879. Successor units. In 1881, following reorganization of the British Army as part of the Childers reforms, the 9th Foot became the Norfolk Regiment with 2 regular battalions and 2 militia battalions. Later titled the Royal Norfolk Regiment, it was amalgamated with the neighbouring Suffolk Regiment to form the 1st East Anglian Regiment. In 1964, the regiment became part of the Royal Anglian Regiment. Currently the successor to the 9th Foot is a company of the 1st Battalion of the Royal Anglians. Reenactment Group. The 9th East Norfolk Regiment is a Napoleonic-era reenactment group who, in addition to taking part in living history events relating to the Peninsular Campaign, are booked to take part in the bicentenary reenactment of the Battle of Waterloo. Battle Honours. Belle-Isle, Havana, Martinique, Rolica, Peninsular War, Vimiero, Corunna, Busico, Salamanca, Vittoria, San Sebastian, Nive, Kabul, Mudki, Ferozshah, Battle of Sabran, Siege of Sevastopol, Kabul, Afghanistan. Colonels of the regiment. Colonels of the regiment were 1685 to 1688 Col. Henry Cornwall, 1688 Col. Oliver Nicholas, 1688 to 1689 Col. John Cunningham, 1689 to 1715 Gen. William Stewart, 1715 to 1717 Lt. Gen. Hon. Sir James Campbell of Lowers, K.B., 1717 to 1718 Marge. Gen. Charles Cathcart, 8th Lord Cathcart, 1718 to 1725 Col. James Otway, 1725 to 1737 Brig. Gen. Richard Kane, 1737 to 1739 Lt. Gen. William Hargrave, 1739 to 1749 George Reed, 1749 to 1751 Marge. Gen. Sir Charles Armand Powlett, K.B., 9th Regiment of Foot, 1751 to 1755 Gen. John Waldegrave, 3rd Earl Waldegrave, 1755 to 1758 Gen. Sir Joseph Yorke, 1st Baron Dover, K.B., 1758 to 1771 Lt. Gen. William Whitmore, 1771 to 1782 Lt. Gen. Edward Ligonier, 1st Earl Ligonier, K.B., 9th Regiment, 1782 to 1788 Marge. Gen. Thomas Twistleton, 13th Baron Saint-Cyr, 1788 to 1794 Hon. Alexander Leslie, 1794 to 1804 Albemarle Bertie, 9th Earl of Lindsey, 1804 to 1805 Peter Hunter, 1805 to 1833, Robert Brown Rigg, 1833 to 1844, Lt. Gen. Sir John Cameron, 1844 to 1848, Sir Thomas Arbuthnot, 1848 to 1871, Gen. Sir James Archibald Hope, GCB, 1871 to 1881, Gen. Sir Henry Bates, KCB. For colonels after 1881, see Royal Norfolk Regiment.